Hello and welcome to Not Your Camel Auntie. I know I said I'd be a bit more regular, but your Camel Auntie has some stuff going on, and actually, that's what today's podcast is going to be about. But before I begin, I'm going to actually give you a title because I actually have one for today, and it's if you'd met me 10 years ago, the version of me that I would have been. Because actually, I've been thinking a lot about the many versions of myself that I have been over the past, well, nearly 42 years. Because guess what, guys? It's birthday month. But I think the version of me in the past, there have been versions of me that people don't speak about. There have been versions of me that I have tried to hide. There have been versions of me that hid and that thought that the quieter I was, the more hardworking I was, the more loyal I was, the more things would get easy. And actually, that's never quite the case, is it? So let's paint a picture of who I was or who I have been in the past. So obviously, those of you that have been following me, you know my story. I was married at 19, then asked for a divorce at 40, or just before my 40th birthday, so actually at 39. And now, nearly 2 years later, it's nearly coming to an end. And in that time, people would look at us and they would see, the holidays, they would see the smiles, they would see, the good kids that we had at home. I was working full time. The ex was out and about. He ran his own business. He was out a lot. Depending on where I was working and who I was with, I could be out or I would be working, depending. Again, I had a very stable kind of family life in the sense of my children. I was also quite tight with my family. And, on the outside, it looked like I had it all. I was in education, so I had a respectable career. I had a respectable husband. I had the two sons that, so many people want, and was doing well, right? I had the big house. I had the cars. There was nothing really wanting from the outside. But on the inside, I was just sad. And there was no reason for that sadness because technically, like I said, I had it all. I think from the inside, I knew that this wasn't the life that I wanted. This wasn't the life for me. That obviously I loved my kids and everything, but that my marriage was for other people, that my marriage was for the community, that my marriage was for the people that, are on the sidelines and say, this is what, the good Tamil family should look like. And I bought into it because that's what you're kind of told to do from a very, very young age. I also had the added thing of my dad was actually the product of divorce. And that was obviously back in the day, and it was back in Sri Lanka. And for him, it was like a really embarrassing thing. He took it very, very personally that his dad had chosen to, go off and get married somewhere else. And for him, family was everything. My dad, he worshipped the ground that his wife and daughters walked on. And it was very much about everything was about us. And he wanted us to kind of live that life too. Everything had to be about family and everything had to be about keeping everything together as a unit. And trust me, I tried. I tried for so long, even knowing that it was making me miserable and that I was getting a piece of myself every single damn day. But I didn't know a change was even possible. I didn't even genuinely thought that it was just something that other people did. And it was so strange because when I actually started coaching in 2021, the year after my dad passed away, my first few clients were all coming to me with marriage issues and were all saying, we want to have the confidence to leave. And I was looking at them thinking, so do I. I don't know how to do it. And I remember one of my clients, she literally had 2 sessions with me. And on the third session, she was like, I've left. And I was hella jealous because I was like, how did you do that? She was thanking me for giving her the confidence. And I felt like imposter syndrome did not even touch it, right? Because I was coaching this woman to get the confidence that she needed. And she got enough confidence in herself to realize that she didn't want to be with her husband anymore and she'd figured out a plan to move out. And there I was. And I knew that that's what I had to do. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. And I think for me, by this point, I had gone silent. By this point, and I think I've mentioned before, seriously, the only time I would ever cry was with my counsellor. I have I'm proper oldest Tamil girl in a Tamil family. And so crying for me is a huge issue. I cannot cry in front of other people. It takes a lot for me to be able to cry in front of other people. And so when Appa died and I needed to cry, I had no kind of source or like no place to go and cry. I found a counsellor that I could go and talk to twice a week. And it wasn't cheap, right? But I would go and speak to her twice a week just so that I knew that I had someone to talk to and someone that I could cry to basically twice a week. And I did that for about 6, 7 months, just because I needed to get so much off my chest and because I needed that place to cry. I think that's when it was like really hitting, right? 2021. I sat there and I thought, wow, like my loneliness is like at a new peak. Like I had given up teaching in a school because of my fibro diagnosis the year before, and then obviously Upper dying, I was burnt out emotionally, physically, every kind of leave. I was just burnt, and I thought, okay, I've got to try and figure out how to move forward with this. And so I was tutoring for the local authority, tutoring kids that were at home with special needs, with anxiety, with whatever, the kids that weren't in school for whatever reason. And it was definitely a slower pace of life than what I was used to. I was giving myself the chance to breathe and grieve and, figure things out. And people were still saying, you're so lucky, you've got this, and, you've got a supportive husband, and, your children have grown, and all of these things. And I understood all of that. I was grateful for it all. But I think people still didn't understand the battles that I was facing. And I'm not saying this in I had everything and I was still sad type thing. It was because at the core of my being, the one thing I have always, always been grateful for and will forever cherish are my boys. Because regardless of anything, they are the be all and end all of my life. And they are, the lights of my being. At the same time, now they know that mum is also a human being, and so therefore mum also has to have a life. They know that they can ring me at whatever time and mum will be there. But they also know that, mum needs to be loved and looked after as well by them, but also by herself. So that's something that, it's taken me a long time to kind of realize myself, and then to kind of be teaching them. It's been a struggle. I guess for me, the turning point really between 2021 and 2023, when I finally left, a few things happened. Realized that I was getting further and further away from who I wanted to be in the core. I was drinking a lot more. I was going out a lot more. I was partying a lot more. And I'm not saying I don't drink or party now, but it's not who I am. Like those who know me know that I am very much a cup of tea, Netflix type person. They know that, yeah, I'm all going out now and then. But my happiest place is chilling. I was just kind of going out and getting drunk, and it's not even just having one or two. It was literally getting so drunk that it was getting scary, like even for me. And I realized that it was because that I just did not want to face how sad, how depressed I was getting. And I told my ex-husband that it just wasn't working, and I had been telling him for years. It wasn't anything new. Even before Upper passed, I'd been speaking about it. And then after Upper passed, we tried marriage counselling. Basically spent 4 sessions telling the counsellor that I was mad, after having spent a lifetime of mine telling me that I was mad. And I think it was in those counselling sessions I just sat there and thought, I'm not. Like, just because I want us to be different, just because I want us to grow as a couple, doesn't mean that I'm mad. Just because I want us to have something different to what every other couple has, because according to him, I was asking a lot because everyone else is, wives were fine with the wife sitting at home and the husband's going out to drink. I wasn't, kind of was more an issue for me than him. And I think because I was able to kind of have that conversation, and because obviously by this point I had done a lot of work for myself, I was just getting to the point where I was like, I can't keep doing this. And for me, I turned around and my kids were getting old, and I could see like into this vast abyss, right, where they were turning into young men and they were going off to work. And it was a case of I was going to turn around and I was going to have no one, because my kids were going to have gone. I didn't have a relationship with my partner. And I thought, why am I making myself miserable in a place I don't want to be, with a person I don't want to be with? And, if my kids ever listen to this, they will be sad. Ultimately, I have spoken about this. If they ask me, I will be honest. But I truly believe that I was married to a narcissist, and all the gaslighting and the narcissism that I had to face meant that I was clouded by doubts and insecurities for years. And the kind of narcissist he was meant that it wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious. Like, genuinely, it was not obvious. Like, it took me, I think, about 17 years to work it out. And I think if you've followed me before, you would realize. I remember I was talking to my counselor one day, and I was talking to my counselor about two family members of mine who are narcissists. And I was saying, oh, yeah, so and so do this, and so do that, and so do this. And then I sat there and I looked at her and I said, shit, my husband does this too. And that's when it clicked. And that's when I thought, wow, how the hell did you miss this? And it it's not an easy thing to kind of realize after that many years, because you genuinely kind of go into marriage thinking, it's going to be a good thing, a decent thing, and you genuinely will sit there and think, it's forever. They're going to look after you, and you do not realize, especially when you consider yourself quite intelligent, you do not realize how emotionally manipulated you've been throughout your entire adulthood. Bearing in mind, I got married at 19. So I think for me, that counselling session obviously was a huge turning point, because I think that's when I was like, wow. Then obviously we had the marriage counselling sessions when it kind of further reiterated to me how much gaslighting had happened in my life. I even managed to call him out on it once. And that's, I think, for me, was like a big thing, because, for those of you that know me, know I hate conflict, I hate confrontation, anything like that. I kind of go, oh God, no, strangely. But this person, my ex, he had this habit of coming home, and he would come upstairs drunk. And depending on how drunk he was, would depend on what he'd say, what he'd do, blah, blah, blah. And this time he had come upstairs, and he was not like so drunk that he was falling on the floor, but he was drunk enough to know that most likely I'd say something. It's just, along the lines of, why are you so drunk, blah, blah, blah. So what he tended to do was he'd come upstairs and he'd start a fight with me, something that I hadn't done, or something that I should have done quicker, or something, clothes on the floor or something. And this particular night, he came upstairs and he was like, oh, in order and I said, I know what you're doing. And he looked at me and he was like, what am I doing? I said, I know you're trying to have a go at me before I have a go at you, because you're drunk. Because if you have a go at me, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not even going to say anything if you're drinking. And he just looked at me. I said, I genuinely just don't care if you come home drunk or not drunk. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I don't even care if you come home at all. And after that, no word of a lie, he never did it again. That was years of him doing that and me not cottoning on that that's what he'd done. So that is what I lived with. And that was the kind of emotional manipulation that I suffered. And, I think for me now, I guess just sit there and I'm like, do you know what? I am so proud of myself for the fact that I came out of that and I was able to kind of just go, wow, because I don't blame him for the way he is, because ultimately it's not just his fault. It was the way he was raised. It was all of his experiences made him the way he is, right? And, he is the only son out of 5 children. He's the 4 out of 5. And, that is an entire topic all by itself, the way our Tamil mums revere their Tamil sons and, all of that stuff. But I will do that on another day. But seriously, it was so strange that for me, I just sat there and I just thought, I don't care. You just do what you need to do. People would look and people would go, oh, but he's bought you this and he bought you that. And yeah, he was great at the things from the outside. He'd throw the parties and he'd buy you the car. But on the inside, this is what was happening. If I wanted £3 to get my eyebrows done, I'd have to ring him and tell him I wanted £3 to get my eyebrows done. I'd have to explain why I needed to get my eyebrows done at that time, on that day, where I was going because I wanted to get my eyebrows done. If I wanted to get my nails done, I always knew I'd get the money, but there was a big song and a half for that. And the issue was, I was working full time. at points in my life, I was earning more money than he was because he was just starting up a business. He was a teacher. And again, it was that thing of I gave him my money, all of it, literally every payday, at 2 a.m. he'd wake me up and say, put the money in my account because for some reason or another he needed it for the shop or whatever. And so again, I did it. And, if I wanted to get food for the kids, it was, why do you need to get food for the kids? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Bearing in mind, his mum lived with us and she cooked for her child and for her every single damn day. But if I wanted to do something for my kids, yeah, let's not. Oh my God. Guys, seriously, every time I come on this, I sit there and think, shit, that's another podcast episode. Shit, that's another podcast episode. So yeah, the actual turning point for me, which is what I started off with, actual turning point for me was my 40th birthday. I had turned around and said, I do not want to do anything. I do not want to party. I cannot cope. I had been telling him up until that point, and bearing in mind I'd already started divorce proceedings technically 2 years prior, 2021 Christmas. I said, I don't want anything. And he was like, but I booked it. I booked the DJ. I booked this. I've invited people. I said, well, I had already told you that I didn't want it. So why did you do that? And he was just like, well, I've done it because I wanted to. I said, well, I'm not coming because I knew at that point that if I let him give me that birthday party, that would be it. I could never ever leave because then it would forever be, oh, but look at you, he loves you, loves you so much that he decided to give you like this, huge ass birthday party, apparently £8,000 birthday party. For a man who since then has said, I have no money, I'm in debt, another situation, another podcast. But yeah, I spent so much time saying, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't. In the end, I just turned around and said, I'm not going to come. I said, I just won't come. And by that time, by my actual birthday of my 40th, I'd broken up with him because he wasn't listening and I'd had enough. Now, I am healing. I don't think I'll ever be healed. There's like 40 plus years of trauma that I need to unpack, caused by various people, caused by various issues, caused by various things in my life. And it's not the easiest thing in the world. Who am I now? I guess I'm clearer in who I am. I'm louder in who I am. I am more self-respecting in who I am. I will fight the good fight if I need to. If I feel like things need to be said out loud, then I will say it out loud, whether that be a troll on TikTok or whether that be a complaint to the gynecology department because I felt like that I wasn't being seen or heard when I went to my gynecology appointment. I then had to make a complaint because I was like, no. And then when they rang me about the complaint, I did say, I'm sorry I complained, I don't normally, because that's me. I don't know if that will ever go away from me. But I think for me, healing is messy. I still struggle to cry in front of people. I still pretty much cry every Saturday morning when I have my counselling appointment. And do I feel guilty? Every damn day. Every damn day. There is guilt. There is guilt that I haven't been the daughter my dad wanted me to be. I haven't been the mum my kids wanted me to be. But I think louder than the guilt is kind of the certainty that I have. I am making the right choice. I have made the right decision. Actually, I have not done a bad thing. I'm not a bad person. These things have needed to happen the way they happened. And ultimately, the one thing I am showing my kids is you are never too old or too brown to go out and live the life that you want to live. And just because I'm a woman or just because I'm their mum doesn't mean that I'm any less entitled to live the life that I want to live. For those of you that have kind of just accidentally stumbled upon this podcast, hi, I'm Suja. I am Suja, the life coach, and on TikTok I'm the Tamil life coach. So sometimes I get told off because I don't always speak in Tamil. And this is who I am. I am open and honest, sometimes disturbingly so. And I have given up trying to please everyone else. I've given up trying to turn around and say, what will they say? Because I genuinely don't care. And if this is the kind of space that you're after, then my DMs are always open for you. My Instagram and my TikTok are spaces where I hope you feel comfortable to know that there are change makers like you out there. I hope you realize that there are spaces where you are allowed to be brown and loud and proud, that you are not fitting into the boxes that they told us to fit into. And for all of you, I am so very, very grateful. If this podcast fits, or if you're watching me on YouTube, I hope you want to share it. I hope you like me enough to give me a follow, and please do follow me on TikTok and or Instagram, or even find me on Facebook. And I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you. Bye.